Hello everyone. Today we are going to play some Factorio. Since we want our factory to grow in every factor, we are going to pump up the ore field's size and richness. And we reduce the frequency because building on ore deposits feels bad. Next we shall have less water in the world and divide it in large lakes, so that we don't get ore deposits scarified by water. Trees can be tweaked in many useful ways. Cliffs are only an annoyance, so we remove them altogether. And we tweak the terrain to look more green because green looks better. For this run, we are not touching enemies nor the other advanced settings. Now that we have told the game what kind of map we want, we shall roll a bunch of times, until we find something that gives us the inspiration we need to start a mega base. And this feels good to me. Maybe with a few tweaks to try to make the grass look greener, so that I don't have to go outside. Okay, this looks perfect. We can now start working on our mega base. There is no time to lose, the factory must grow. As usual, we never managed to properly land the rocket, so we crashed again. But don't worry, we are not planning to leave this planet and we will be building thousands of rockets anyways. The first thing we shall do is salvage what survived from our ship, some ammunition, a furnace and a drill. Luckily, we crashed close to some mineral deposits, which will help us rebuild our ship. We shall start by gathering some coal, so that we can power the drill we had on our ship. We are going to use that coal, the drill and the furnace to extract and refine some iron into iron plates. Since there seems to be no rocks on this planet, we shall manually extract some stone from this deposit and use it to make a new drill. Then, we make a second one and place them on the coal deposit in a way that they will feed each other. While coal and iron plates are building up, we gather some wood, and we make a bunch of chests where we can store the stone that our next drill is going to produce. Finally, we automate the extraction of the last material of these 4 deposits, copper. We are going to need it later on. Now that we have set up the basics, we only have to scale things up. We must remember that the factory must grow. However, that way of growing won't work for much. The first thing we have to do for a better job is procure ourselves with electricity. So, we shall have a pump that feeds water to a boiler which will output steam to a steam engine. Now we can start moving the power we are generating with electric poles to our mineral deposits. And then we upgrade our old coal drills with the more powerful electric ones. Next, since this is a game about automation, we shall automate the part of bringing coal to our boiler. To do so, we are going to place down a line of conveyor belts that goes from a couple of coal miners to the power plant. And then an inserter will load up the fuel from the conveyor to the burner. And it was during that job that we have been attacked by some weird creatures. Luckily, we had found an old weapon on our ship. So, we shall have a radar to find where these monsters are coming from. Going back to the automation, we shall now start extracting and processing iron in a better way. So we shall have a bunch of electric drills move the ores on a conveyor. We shall move the minerals to a more open space where we can have a large smelting facility. However, we shouldn't cross the conveyor belts. To find a way around that issue, we need to research better logistics. And thus we start crafting some research labs and research packs. Since the craftings are getting long, we shall first aim our research to automation. And we start doing some research. It is now night and we have finally completed the automation research. Now we can build some assembling machines that will craft the research packs and free us from such task. We give them some materials and the setup starts working. Now we can move the research focus back to logistics so that we can cross the coal belt with the iron one. And while we were watching at our factory being more automated, it was at that moment that we got invaded. After destroying our radar, the monster started attacking us. And, After an intensive fight, we managed to survive the invasion. Once the enemies are gone, we can craft some repair kits and fix the stuff that got damaged. It appears that this is the place from where the enemies attacked us. They have been attracted by the cloud of pollution made by our burners. But, with our puny pistol, we don't have a chance, so we shall research a better military technology. Once researched, we shall craft a machine gun and some ammunition. Now we can go fight back. However, their strong defense injured us quite a lot. So we shall go fishing and eat some healing fish. Now that we are prepared, we can go fight. And then a new issue arose. We ran out of ammunition. However, instead of running, we should probably punch these worms in the antennas or whatever we can punch. And take down their nest the same way, so that they won't bother us anymore. And, after a lot of punching, we managed to clean this area. Meanwhile, we have unlocked underground belts and we can now do a belt crossing and start working on our iron smelting facility. We are also going to need coal. We can take it with a splitter from the power plant line, but we are going to give fuel priority to the power plant. We shall have 2 lines of furnaces that output together on a same conveyor line, while each one has its own feeding belt on the outside. Since we are going to have to place both coal and iron ore on the same belt, we are going to merge the 2 resources with a simple tricks that engineers do not want you to know. 2 splitter around 2 belts going outside from the center of the setup. Once we connect both the resources, you can see the setup starts working and producing a lot of iron plates, ready on a conveyor belt. Since we need room for improvements, we are going to make this belt way longer. And we must never forget, the factory must grow. Next, we do the same with copper. And now there is an issue, everything is moving slower. That is because there is lack of power. We forgot to make the power plant grow. And so we quickly fix that problem. Now it's time to give a purpose to our metals. We start by moving closer the 2 conveyors, starting to for what we will call the main bus. Then we take out some of both the resources to make our first production plant, which will be making circuits. That way, we can take them and reduce by a lot the amount of time we spend crafting. And, of course, the factory must grow. We are also going to use these circuits for other stuff, so we add them to the main bus. The next facility is going to be producing more than one thing. The first 2 are going to be conveyor belts and inserters. We are going to stock them up inside some chests so that we can quickly retrieve them when we need them for building more stuff. But we will also need them later one for something else. The next thing we are going to produce here is the red science packs. We are going to need a lot of assembling machines for these since this is a slow crafting. Finally, we are going to feed these research packs to a chain of labs that will be feeding packs from one to the other. The next thing we are going to research is an usage for the belt with belts and inserters, the logistics science pack. And we shall have a couple of turrets to guard our labs. The next issue, as you can see, is that we do not have enough resources on the conveyor. So we make the factory grow. And a growing factory needs a growing power plant. The next thing we are going to produce is steel. Since steel is going to require 5 iron plates for 1 steel bar, we are laying out the furnaces in a slightly different way. And, of course, we add that to our main bus. Now, since we are getting attacked quite often and our ammunition is weak, we are going to have a facility that produces steel strength and ammunition. And it is probably time to research walls and start mass producing them. Once we have enough of them, we can start marking our territory. And when the enemies will start chewing them and breaking some parts, we shall reinforce these points and place some turrets to guard these spots. However, attack is the best defense, but we have too much to walk. So we shall research cars. And once our engine facility is up and running, we shall take a few engines for our multi-engine, coal-powered car, which we place and start driving around. This car is also equipped with a turret that is better than our machine gun. Now we can quickly reach and clean enemy bases. Now that we secured some area, we can make the factory grow. And that didn't last long, since, to progress further we are going to need oil. So we made a pumping outpost on a spot that had many crude oil field. And we bring it to our base with a long pipeline. Once in our base, we are going to store it into a tank and refine it into gas. Then, we are going to use that gas for plastic production, which we use for making the second tier of circuits, the red ones. We are going to use these for crafting a modular armor. That armor can take inside modules. We have to decide how to place them inside a grid, based on what we want and what we can fit. The first useful thing we are going to equip is night vision goggles, so that we can see things better on night. Next, to soften the load on our power plant, we are going to build a large field of solar panels. And this looks good enough for the moment. It is actually producing enough that our power plant is idling. Now that we have more power, can start doing some power-heavy research, such as laser for laser turrets. We are going to need these because our old turrets are starting to get overwhelmed. And I guess we need to research some upgrades before the laser ones become good. Also, during the night, we can't meet the energy requirements of our base, so we shall have some accumulators to provide during power surges. The next thing we are going to do to push away the enemies is a tank, which we shall feed with rocket fuel. Even with that fuel it is still slower than a car, but it has way higher defensive and offensive capabilities. For example, we can just roll over the biters. Then, other than the turret, we have a flamethrower and a cannon. However, our factory is not growing fast enough. To fix that issue, we are going to unlock robots. The first kind of robot we shall use is construction. These can work from our inventory if we equip a Roboport module in our armor. These robots are going to rebuild and repair whatever is destroyed near us. To make them build new stuff, we can just press Ctrl C. And then we press Ctrl V. And, if we do an oopsie, we can just press Ctrl Z. The issue, as you have probably noticed, is that they are incredibly slow. So we are going to do a research that will make them move faster. And here we can see the speed up from just the second level of research. Talking about speed, since we are so slow when walking, we shall equip our new power armor with an exoskeleton. The other kind of robot we are going to use is the logistic one. These robots work only inside the logistic area of a Roboport, which is the orange one. The green one is for the construction ones. Since we are going to want them to work everywhere, we have to build up a net of Roboports that will cover the whole area of our base. The way we are going to use them for the moment is to set some filters on what we want our inventory to contain. We are going to set the minimum restock the robot shall make sure we always have and what shall be the maximum after which things will be moved to the trash slots that will be emptied by the bots. And here you can see the bots doing their job. And yeah, we are going to set a filter for almost each item. Now that we have something to help us in making the factory grow, we run into a new issue. We do not have enough iron. And following the issue, we go back to our mine. We can't expand it anymore and it's already full of mining machines. So we shall go mine some new deposit. However, these are too far from our base for using conveyor belts. We shall research a better material transportation way, trains. The stations are going to require a lot of space, so we shall expand our territory. Thankfully to bots, we can just copy and paste a piece of wall. And here you can see the last touches to our new defense line being built. Now we can make a new huge free building area by removing the old defense line. And look at the storm of robots coming to clean up the area. Now that we have more space, we can start laying down the rails. And we can use gates to make the rails go outside of our base without holes in the walls. While this was the main rail, we shall have one for stations where trains will stop by to unload the minerals. And then the train can go back to the main rail to exit the base. And we shall have more than one station. To increase the amount of stations, we can just copy-paste them. Next, we can start setting up our first train. We are going to use trains with 1 locomotive and 4 wagons. We could have a second locomotive on the back to make them go both ways, but we are using single-ways rails. Next we shall have stack inserters to unload the train, and we also need a line of fuel for the locomotives. Finally, to make the station work properly we have to ensure that each wagon gets emptied at the same speed. To do that, we are going to build a system of splitters that will perfectly distribute the amount of resources taken and deposited on each belt. The one we are building is called 4-lane balancer. We can copy this system on each of the stations. Now we have to make these rails not be a dead point and bring them to the mining spots. After we close the entrance and exit points, we have to find a way to get all the way to the various deposits without traffic jams. So, we shall go in a free area and start trying to design how we are going to do rail intersections. The first thing we shall do is a quarter of the normal crossing, then we copy it over the remainder. Now we have to place rail signals. The trick is to have normal signals on the exit and chain signals on the entrance of the crossing. Since this will be the sample used, we shall also have light poles to bring power. Now that we have our sample crossing for the early game, instead of copying it, we are going to make a blueprint out of it. That way, we can have it always at hand in a more portable and organized way. And once it is saved, we can clean this area from our experiments. We shall also have a blueprint for straight rails, so that we can place them faster. Finally, we place our rail blueprints into a blueprint book, so that we have all the rail samples in a single handy place. Now we can start laying down the main rail path and connect our base to it. All is left to do is to walk towards the ore deposits. Once we get there, we shall have a station, which we shall connect to the main rail system through a dedicated crossing. However, we are forgetting something extremely important: enemies. They won't attack stuff that doesn't do anything such as rails, but they will attack our means once they start working or if they are in the way. So, we shall have a wall protect our machinery. Then we double its thickness and add turrets to guard it. We can now start the mineral extraction operation. We shall give this station a proper name. We are going to name it with the amount of wagons it can work with, followed by the operation it does. L stands for load. Finally, what it moves. And we do the same with the first unloading station. Now we can select the train we previously built and call it to the loading station, which will start accelerating towards us. Once it arrives, the loading process will start. And you can see on the locomotive the amount of stuff it contains. However, to make it work autonomously, we have to set the stations and conditions it must follow. Now we can also go inside the locomotive. And, once the train has been completely filled, it will bring us with the mineral to the main base. And here it will be unloaded. We do the same thing with copper. Now that we have the raw ores in our base, we can build some furnaces to smelt them into usable plates. We are going to use the new materials for making more circuits. More green circuits, more red circuits, And, finally, the last kind of circuit, the blue ones. However, all of that new machinery has a huge toll on our power balance. As soon as night comes and our solar arrays shuts off, we have a blackout. To fix that issue, we are going to research how to make a nuclear power plant. To fuel it, we are going to mine uranium. However, to be extracted, we need sulfuric acid. The mining equipment indeed has a fluid intake. Since we are far from our base, we shall have a train with fluid wagons to bring the liquid to our outpost. And once it has been delivered, the mining operation can start. Next we are going to centrifuge the two kinds of uranium, the light green and dark green ones. As you can see, we get more than 99% dark green. But the reactor fuel needs 5% of the light green kind. We can use the leftover for heavier armor-piercing ammunition, or we can use a weird process to turn it into light green. Anyways, it is now time to build our new power plant. Since we are still in early game, we are not going to bother too much with rations and efficiency. We shall have 4 adjacent cores that will boost each other, for a theoretical total of 480 megawatts. And we are going to store some power as steam in tanks and heat in heat pipes. And our system is going online exactly during the night, when we needed it. You can see how it outshines the production of solars by a lot. We can now dismantle our old stinky coal plant. And I must say that the sky is kinda trafficked nowadays. The issue now is that we are getting a lot of dark green rocks and none of the light green ones. So we shall research a way of bleaching rocks. To bleach stones, we need to use the bright stones as catalyst. This is a slow process and requires a lot of catalysts, so it will take a while before all the centrifuges start working. However, we now have even too many shiny stones. We have so many that we can even throw them at the enemies by researching the ultimate debugging tool, nukes. While the research is in progress, we can equip ourselves with a better armor, such as the Power Armor MK2. We are going to fine-tune it by adding 2 portable fusion reactors, 5 exoskeletrons, 1 MK2 rubber port, 3 energy shields MK2, and a personal laser turret. Now that we are well equipped, and we can run fast enough, we shall do some bug fixing. All we have to do now is shoot and then run away. And look at how nice of a cleaning these magic rocks can do. This is a really effective way of fixing bugs, but there is one more automatic. Artillery turrets. These have a huge range and will automatically target enemy spawners. We can also manually target on a way higher range by using a remote. And thus we can do a nice bug removal without having to move one block. However, we still have to walk around for building. To fix that issue we are going to do the last research, spidertrons. Spidertrons are cool pets that can do what players can do, but instead of being controlled by a player, they are controlled with a remote. We can personalize them in many ways too. Once we link a controller, we can move it around. To make it useful, we are going to personalize its interiors the same way we did with our armor. Now we can send it to various kind of repairs. We can also send it to cleaning enemy bases if we wanted. And with that, we can finally build our base without having to move. However, this was just the tutorial. It is now time to finally complete it by launching our first rocket. In case you are wondering, I'm not sure on which one is the first one, but it doesn't really matter. Now, some of you think that this is not the finish of the tutorial but the completion of the game. I say it's a tutorial because we haven't even built a factory capable of building a mega base factory yet. So, let's start working on that. The first thing shall be to clean up the spawn area. there are too many badly designed machines in there. We are going to use a filtered deconstruction plan to leave the rubber ports intact. Once the robots have cleaned the area, we shall make it look more like a factory by dropping down some concrete. Luckily the bots are going to drop it from the sky, so that we don't get our feet stick to the ground. Next, since we are in the mood for bots and this is a generic purpose factory, we are going to rework our smelting station. Now, before you leave because you are a Chad belt builder who can't stand that many bots, don't worry, we are going to use belts in the mega base. However, before that, there is one last job we have to do with bots, a mall. Which is an area of our base that can craft about every item in the game. While we wait for the rest of our factory of factories to be built, we can start working on stuff that will be useful even in the definitive factory, power. To do that, we are going to prepare an army of spidertrons properly equipped for dropping down large photovoltaic fields. Now that we are ready for dropping solar panels, we need a good blueprint. However, after many tries, the most satisfying one was the one we manually did at the start of the game. Now, since we are going to lay down huge fields and we want it to be easy and comfortable, we shall make a grid-aligned blueprint. These are blueprints that will automatically align themselves in a grid, so we can't place them in a wrong way. Finally, we send our Robotron squad build them. However, these were barely enough for our factory of factory. Far from the requirements of a mega base. The issue is that we don't have any room for building. To secure more area, we are going to design our next definitive blueprint, an artillery defensive outpost, which will consist of a mix of defensive mechanisms for a train that will host some artillery wagons. Now, this was built in a safe place to make a blueprint. To make the real ones, we are going to use an appropriate army of spidertrons. These will have all the stuff required for crafting such outpost, as well as some defensive equipment for safely building such structure. Now it is time to build the station that will refill the trains. This kind of train will also have a transport wagon with filters to restock the repairs for the defenses that could be damaged. And, once ready, we can bring the train to the outpost. The artillery wagons are heavier than normal ones, so much that a single, nuclear-fueled locomotive has issues accelerating. We have 7 of these though. Once arrived, the debugging will start. The artillery will take down the enemy spawners while defended by the lasers. Now, there are going to be many such stations with many trains that may get decommissioned. To avoid traffic, we shall have a parking slot for idling trains. And we are going to make a train blueprint for filling these parking slots. Now that we have cleaned a nice area, we can start laying down more solar panels. However, we need to expand our territory to have more area for our solar plant. So, we are going to use multiple spidertron platoons for building 4 laser turret walls while also planting more solar panels. We are going to need a lot of power for our mega base. We are also planting accumulators for the nights. After a long time of planting solar plants and walls, we have finally finished our mini-base. Now that we also have stocked up a lot of modules, we can use our spidertron army to start building the mega base. But, before that, we shall make a few blueprints. The rail crossing we made earlier on works well with 4 wagon trains, but it has its limitations. We are now going to start by making a bigger one. We are going to enlarge the old version with a runaround and more parallel rails. That way, trains can avoid taking the whole crossing if they don't need to. And this is the finished result. We are also going to have quad parallel rails with double power line. so that if one line gets broken, there is the other. Talking of rails, we shall also prepare a lot of trains in an appropriate deposit. Next, we shall design our mining outposts. We are going to have smelting on site because a train can fit twice more plates than raw ores. The belts here are still mostly empty because this ore deposit was still one of the small ones close to the spawn. The next thing we shall do is to find a suitable spot for starting our mega base tier things. Radars have a really limited range, however, the manual mode of artillery can be used for scouting big areas. There is also a research that will infinitely increase its range. Then we can move there with our spidertron army and secure a new zone. And our base is finally starting to look medium-sized. Once we have found more ore deposits, all we have to do is copy and paste plants that will extract, smelt and load trains of ores with a single click. And, when we finally have a good source of resources, we can finally start working on science. The first setup we are going to do will make 1000 yellow science packs per minute. And we are loading these onto a train. Next we shall make the space science pack, which is a rocket launcher pad. We have to launch one rocket each minute for reaching 1k SPM. And since they come in packs of 1000 at a time, it will make the graph look bad. Also, filling one train of that stuff takes some time. They stack quite a lot. Finally, we are also going to make 1k SPM of each of the other science packs and a research station made of 400 labs. Once we have managed to get a train of each kind of research packet, we can connect the labs to the stations to admire the moving colored stuff. Now we can test how fast we do research with a low-tier research I kept so far. And then we can start doing the infinite research faster. Now that we have done about everything, all there is left to do is to make the factory grow until we hit the lag cap. To do so, we just have to keep spamming copy and paste on whole sections of our base. However, since we are only average players and not of Factorio, I think we can quit there. Bye bye.